My mom gave birth to me when she was 17. Yeah, I know how that sounds. From what I've heard, she used to sleep around so much in high school that she doesn't even know who my father is. But she eventually found out, and I can't believe this well-known former YouTuber is my father. As a woman in her teens, she was definitely not willing to raise a child. But my grandparents didn't allow her to get an abortion. As a result, she was forced to take care of me. She was the opposite of a good mother. If I was crying, she would put on loud music and pretend that didn't exist. There were nights when I had to go to bed hungry because she refused to breastfeed me and I wouldn't eat anything else. Thankfully, my grandparents noticed this and took me under their care. My mother was happy to stay away from me and went back to her type of lifestyle. She moved out into a dorm to prepare for college. My grandmother took proper care of me at home and my grandfather would take me to the park often. He had a surgery done on his hip, so he wasn't able to move that much, but always made sure to play with me. I consider them my real parents and will always be grateful to them. When I was 4 years old, they hired a babysitter to take care of me because they had to attend a wedding. On their way back, they had a terrible accident and unfortunately didn't make it. As a kid at the time, I didn't know that my life was about to become a living hell. I cried for days and days. The house was in my mother's name, so she moved back. It's like she was happy that her parents were gone, because she began having late night parties in the house literally a week later. She became the queen of her college because she had an empty house where everyone could hang out and do substances. At that time I still wasn't over the passing of my real parents, so I would cry violently in my room. Sometimes my cries would reach downstairs and I guess her friends asked about it because she would barge into my room with anger on her face and put tape over my mouth. Then she would proudly say, "If you keep crying, I'll throw you out the window." So I would cover my mouth with my hands and cry with a muffled voice. I remember having to beg her for food because she would always be hungover. After a few months of this kept repeating, she became fed up with me and took me to another state. I was excited because I thought we were finally going to spend time as a family. Guess what she did? She left me on the front door of an orphanage and drove off. Little did she know, that would be the start of her downfall. Years later, she tried to reconnect, but I told her no. I think CPS or the authorities tried to contact her after she abandoned me, but she never responded. Life at the orphanage was just as bad. There were too many kids for the caretakers to pay proper attention to everyone. I was still a crybaby, so they hated me for how much noise I made. There were plenty of resources for everyone to share, but the clever kids would hog most of them. I don't even remember having a favorite TV show or cartoon. The male caretakers would say, "You're a girl, so you have more needs than others. That's why you're not happy." I'm honestly proud of the younger me for surviving all that. When I was 9, I was adopted by a couple struggling to have a child of their own. Let's call them Kate and Brad. The words they spoke during our first meeting will stay with me forever. "We won't try to be your real parents if you don't want us to, but we promise to provide you with everything you need, including love." And believe me, these two were the loveliest human beings on earth. They showered me with so much care and love that I began calling them Mom and Dad within a year. They enrolled me in school, and thanks to them, I breezed through until I reached high school. I was a good kid and got good grades because I wanted to impress my new parents. However, I got bullied for being a different race from them. Kids would talk about me all the time, saying, "Look, it's the kid with blank parents. Do you think her mom cheated on her dad?" But since I knew the truth, I just ignored them. I met Aeon in my 3rd year of high school, and everything flipped over from there. He made me feel so happy and wanted that I could no longer hear the nasty comments from my bullies. I introduced him to Kate and Brad, and though they were reluctant at first, they soon welcomed him and his family. I took psychology in college and eventually started working as a therapist. Having gone through a tough childhood, I wanted to help others struggling with their past. At 25, I was still living with my parents, but Adon and I were saving up to buy a house. Then one day, my biological mother knocked on the door. My neglectful mother, who hadn't been around in 20 years, wanted to reconnect. I told her no. She looked like she had been run over by a train. Her once attractive looks were nowhere to be seen. I think she's 41 or 42 years old now. She said, "Hi Ellie, do you remember me? I'm your mother." I kind of recognized her already, so I said, in a frustrated voice, "My mother is sitting on the couch inside this house. I don't know who you think you are, but please go away." Then I shut the door on her. From there, a series of events began that would disturb my sleep for the next month. The very next day, she knocked on the door again. I wasn't home at the time, so Kate ended up talking to her. I don't know the exact details of their encounter, but my bio mom tried to pull Kate's hair. She was kicked out and the cops were called on her. Then she began exhibiting sociopathic behavior. She would show up to my office to bother me, begging for me to listen to her excuses. Adon helped me deal with the stress. Eventually, I agreed to sit down and talk with her, but only in a public location. Part of it was my pride as a therapist, and I just couldn't bear to see someone in such a pathetic state. The meeting went exactly as expected. She just gave me excuses about how she was a naive teenager who only wanted to party. She mentioned having trouble with the law and how she had to sell her house, leaving her homeless. She was asking me for money and wanted to stay at Brad's house for a few weeks. A random thought popped into my head, and I asked her if my grandparents had left any inheritance for me. Her exact words were, "Oh yes, they did, honey, but mommy was in a lot of trouble, so she had to use all of it. But you're out of college now, so I guess you didn't really need it." I was pissed. I would be earning twice the money I am now if I had been able to afford a better college. I threw water in her face and told her, "You deciding to be a damn WHRE was your choice. I was just a baby, and you decided to abandon me. You have no right to ask anything of me now." I will never let you step foot into my real parents' house. If you bother me or my family again, I will get a restraining order against you. Goodbye.